I've worked in a morgue long enough to know that death has its own language. Some deaths whisper, some scream, some sit in silence, daring you to figure them out. But every once in a while, you come across one that doesn't fit into any category, one that looks you in the eye, even from the cold metal table, and says, "You'll never understand me." That's the kind of case I'm about to tell you, and even after all these years, I still can't shake it. It started like any other quiet Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where you move through the halls of the coroner's office with a cup of stale coffee in your hand and a stack of routine reports under your arm. I remember thinking it might actually be a simple day. No car pileups, no overdoses, no messy crime scenes waiting to spill their secrets across my desk. Just the ordinary. But death rarely respects our schedules, and by 9 a.m., the call had already come in. A body had been found under strange circumstances. No witnesses, no obvious cause of death. Just a man, lying on the floor of his own apartment, as if life had decided to abandon him without warning. When the gurney rolled in, I didn't expect much. I've seen thousands of bodies, and most of them follow patterns. Heart attacks, strokes, accidents, they carry predictable signs, like pages from the same old book. But when I pulled back the sheet, my breath caught for a moment. He was young, mid-30s, with a strong build and skin that should have still carried warmth. Yet his expression was frozen in a way I'd never seen before. His eyes, half open, had a glassy stare that wasn't just empty. It felt unsettled, like something inside him had been interrupted mid-sentence. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. No wounds, no bruises, no sign of struggle. His body was intact. Too intact, almost. I bent closer, searching for the small clues the human body always leaves behind. The tiny bruising under the nails, petechiae in the eyes, the telltale hints that whisper how life slipped away. But there was nothing. His skin was pale, yes, but not in the way you'd expect. It was almost waxen, like a candle snuffed out before it had burned down. Cases like this don't scare me, not exactly, but they unsettle me, because they remind me that medicine doesn't have all the answers. Science is supposed to explain cause and effect, reason and result. Yet here was a man, apparently healthy, gone without explanation. And as I slid on my gloves and prepared the instruments, I felt the weight of something I can't quite put into words, a kind of pressure in the room. I always start with the external exam, running through the routine, because routine is the only thing that keeps you grounded when you're staring at the unknown. Height, weight, general condition. The clipboard in my hand felt heavier with every note I jotted down. There were no needle marks, no defensive wounds, no fractures. His fingernails were clean. His clothing was unremarkable, a plain gray t-shirt, sweatpants, socks. He could have been anyone, anywhere. But then I noticed his hands. They were clenched into fists, not in rigor, but tightly enough that I had to pry them open with care. And inside the right fist, pressed deep into his palm, was a tiny scrap of paper. At first, I thought it might be nothing, a receipt, a wrapper, some meaningless debris picked up by accident. But when I unfolded it, I saw that it wasn't printed. It was written. The words were barely legible, scrawled in frantic handwriting. "Don't let them take me." I stared at it longer than I should have, the paper trembling just slightly in my gloved hand. Notes like that don't belong to natural deaths. They belong to something else, something darker. When I proceeded to the internal exam, I expected answers. The heart, lungs, brain, they always tell their stories eventually. But as I opened him up, I was met with silence. His organs were pristine. No clots, no ruptures, no signs of disease. Toxicology would take weeks, but even then, something in my gut told me that it wouldn't explain what I was seeing, because there was nothing. It was as if his body had simply decided to quit, without permission, without warning. And yet, as I examined his lungs, I found something that chilled me. They weren't collapsed, they weren't diseased, but there was a faint trace of frothy fluid at the back of his throat, subtle enough that another examiner might have missed it. Pulmonary edema, maybe, but the context didn't fit. It was like puzzle pieces forced into the wrong box. I paused, leaning back, my gloves slick, my eyes heavy. The scrap of paper kept burning in my mind. Don't let them take me. Who was them? What did he mean? And why had he clenched it so tightly that it left an imprint on his skin even after death? I bagged the note, sealed it, and logged it as evidence. But the words followed me. They followed me when I stitched them back together, when I scrubbed my hands raw in the sink, when I sat at my desk staring at the incomplete report. And then the phone rang. It was a detective assigned to the case, his voice low and tight. He asked me if I'd seen anything unusual. I hesitated, because unusual is relative in this line of work. But when I mentioned the note, the silence on the other end of the line lasted a little too long. Finally, he said, "Yeah, we found something similar in his apartment, on the wall." I pressed the receiver tighter to my ear. On the wall. The detective exhaled sharply, scrawled into the paint. Same words, over and over. Don't let them take me. For a moment, the room spun around me. I glanced at the man's body, zipped back into the bag, lying on the cold steel tray. His face, even in death, looked strained, like he had died mid-plea. And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to be just another unexplained death. This was going to be the case that crawled under my skin, the one that followed me home at night, the one that whispered through the walls of my apartment when I tried to sleep. Because bodies don't usually come with messages. And when they do, it means they have something left to say. I should have walked away that day, treated it like any other file, sealed the report, and let the detectives handle it. That's what professionalism demands. But something about him, about the note, wouldn't let me. It clung to me like smoke, curling into my lungs, refusing to leave. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. Not peaceful, not resigned, but startled, as though the final moment of his life had caught him off guard. That night, I stayed late at the office. The halls were empty, the buzz of fluorescent lights echoing against tile floors. My colleagues had already gone home, the shoes clicking out of the morgue as if eager to outrun the weight of the dead. But I sat there, staring at the bag scrap of paper under the lamplight. Don't let them take me. The handwriting was messy, uneven. The letters slanted and jagged. Not the kind of script you write at leisure, but the kind you scrawl when fear has taken hold of your hands. I kept thinking, fear leaves traces. It etches itself into the skin, the organs, the bones. But this man's body had none of it. Nothing but that one clue. It didn't fit. Out of habit, I pulled up his preliminary background file. Name, Daniel Mercer. 34 years old. Single. Employed as a systems analyst at a mid-sized firm downtown. No criminal record. No medical conditions beyond mild seasonal allergies. In other words, ordinary. Painfully ordinary. The kind of man who shouldn't have ended up on my table. But ordinary people don't die clutching desperate notes. When I finally pushed back from my desk, it was close to midnight. I stepped into the hallway, the silence pressing against me like a physical weight. The morgue after hours is a different creature altogether. During the day, it's all efficiency, paperwork, voices, movement. But at night, the bodies feel louder. They don't speak, of course, but you sense them. Their stillness pressing in from behind locked doors. That night, I could swear I heard the echo of his words in the walls. Don't let them take me. I told myself I was just tired. That's what happens when you spend too long in the company of the dead. You start imagining things. But even when I finally drove home, the road stretching dark and empty ahead of me, the words wouldn't let go. 2 days later, the toxicology report came back. I held the envelope with more anticipation than I wanted to admit, hoping for some simple answer, a drug, a poison, anything that could box this death into something familiar. But the results mocked me. Negative. No narcotics, no alcohol, no toxins. His body was as clean as it had looked. I called the detective back. His name was Alvarez, a man with a voice that carried weariness even through the phone. When I told him the tox screen was negative, he sighed like he already knew. Then, almost reluctantly, he added, his apartment, it wasn't just the one wall. There were notes everywhere. Drawers, notebooks, scraps of paper under cushions. All the same thing. Don't let them take me. The room chilled. Any sign of forced entry? Struggle? None, Alvarez replied. Doors were locked for me inside. Windows too. No sign anyone else was there. He hesitated. It's like he was hiding from something that wasn't even in the room. The words lodged in my chest. I looked down at Daniel's file again. A man in his 30s, healthy, employed, living alone. And yet he had filled his home with desperate pleas. Pleas he carried into death, pressed into the palm of his own hand like a secret talisman. I wanted to leave it at that. I wanted to hand it all over to Alvarez, file the report as undetermined, and move on. But that's not what happened. Because later that week, Daniel Mercer's sister came to claim his belongings, and she asked to see me. We sat in the small, sterile consultation room near the front of the office. She was younger than him, mid-20s, with the same sharp cheekbones, the same restless eyes. Her hands twisted in her lap as she spoke. Daniel wasn't crazy, she said, almost before she even sat down. If that's what people are saying, he wasn't crazy. I told her I hadn't made any conclusions yet, which was true, but I asked her what she meant. She leaned forward, voice low. He'd been calling me for weeks, saying someone was watching him, that they wanted to take him. He never said who, just them. Her words sliced through me. Did he describe them? Anyone following him? She shook her head, frustration in her eyes. He wouldn't, or maybe he couldn't. He just sounded terrified. He said he couldn't sleep, that every time he closed his eyes, he felt them getting closer. I told him to see a doctor, but he just laughed. He said doctors couldn't help with this. The consultation room suddenly felt too small. My pen hovered uselessly over my notepad. Did he have any history of mental illness? No, she said firmly. None. He was quiet, yeah, but stable. Normal. Until her voice cracked. Until he wasn't. I wanted to comfort her, to offer some explanation, but what could I say? That her brother had died with fear etched into his very last breath, and I couldn't explain why. That even science, even cold, hard autopsy, had no answer? When she left, she pressed a photo into my hand. It was of Daniel, smiling at a barbecue, a paper plate balanced on his lap, sunlight glinting off his hair. He looked alive. So alive that for a second, I almost forgot I had already seen him lifeless. That night, I placed a photo on my desk beside the scrap of paper. His smile, his scrawled words, two halves of a story that refused to connect. And the longer I stared at them, the more the silence in my office began to feel heavy. Not just heavy, watchful. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I finally turned out the lights. But as I walked to my car, the words replayed in my head again and again, like a broken record. Don't let them take me. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it, that after filing my report, I moved on, let the detectives chase the shadows. But what happened next made that impossible, because a week later, another body came in. Different name, different address, same age, same sudden, inexplicable death, and in his clenched hand, another note, the exact same words. Don't let them take me. When the second body came in, I froze. Same posture, same clenched hand, same desperate scrap of paper. The words were identical, jagged letters, panicked scrawl. Don't let them take me. I remember standing there, gloved hands trembling over the evidence bag, and thinking, this isn't coincidence. Coincidences don't leave matching notes tucked into stiff, lifeless fingers. This was a pattern. The man's name was Thomas Avery, 36, a software engineer, lived alone. No medical history that would explain sudden death. He was found slumped over his desk by a co-worker who stopped by after he missed 2 straight days of work. And just like Daniel Mercer, his apartment was littered with notes. Desk drawers, sticky pads, bathroom mirror, all of them pleading with the same words. When I called Detective Alvarez, his side told me everything before he even spoke. We know, he muttered. We're pulling the files. It's weird. Weird. That's the word he chose. As if weird even began to touch it. I stared down at the man's chest as I performed the Y incision. No trauma. No signs of overdose. No evidence of self-harm. Just an ordinary body that had stopped being ordinary. By the time I sewed him back up, the silence in the room felt unbearable. Because I wasn't just dealing with the dead anymore. I was dealing with something that was moving, spreading. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment with the lights on, the notes sealed and evidence bags laid out across my table. 2 different men, 2 different lives, 2 different deaths, but one identical plea. And the handwriting. God, the handwriting. I pulled the 2 scraps side by side, studying every slanted letter, every jagged curve. They weren't similar. They were identical, as though the same hand had written them both. But that was impossible. When dawn broke, I drove to the office early, ignoring the bags under my eyes. I told myself I was overthinking. That fatigue was blurring my judgment. But when I showed the 2 notes to Alvarez, he went quiet. Too quiet. Finally, he said, "We'll have handwriting analysis done. Maybe Mercer and Avery knew each other." "Did they?" I asked. "Not that we can find. No shared employer, no social ties, no family overlap. Nothing." He rubbed his face like he hadn't slept either. "But give us time. People are always connected somehow. It's just a matter of finding the thread." But in my gut, I didn't believe him. This didn't feel like human connections. It felt like something else. Something older, deeper. Something waiting. A week passed before the 3rd body arrived. This one was worse. A young woman, 29, found in her bathtub, water gone cold, no signs of drowning. Her hand, pale and stiff above the porcelain, clutched a soaking piece of paper. When we dried it, the words bled across the page, but they were still legible. Still the same. "Don't let them take me." By then, even the texts were whispering. Word spreads fast in a morgue. Patterns become rumors. Rumors become fear. I caught them glancing over their shoulders as they wheeled bodies in, as though expecting one to sit up and explain what was happening. And me, I stopped pretending I was immune, because each night when I locked my office, I started hearing sounds. Not loud, not obvious, just whispers. Breath slipping through the air vents. The faint creak of gurney wheels when no one was moving them. One night, I swore I saw a shadow cross the hallway outside my door. Long, thin, wrong. But when I opened it, there was nothing. I told myself it was stress. The human brain invents things under pressure. But deep down, I felt it. Whatever had taken them, Daniel, Thomas, the young woman, it was here too, waiting. The 3rd autopsy broke me more than I'd like to admit. When I peeled back the scalp, I noticed tiny hemorrhages along the dura, pimpered bursts, as though blood vessels had ruptured under strain. Not typical. Not in a body with no blunt force trauma. And when I checked her heart, the tissues showed microscopic scarring. Stress. Fear. Like her body had been burning itself alive from the inside out. That night, I sat in the morgue long after everyone had gone home. The 3 notes lay in front of me like accusations. My pen hovered over the reports, but the words wouldn't come. Undetermined cause of death. Possible cardiac event. Stress-induced failure. Clinical lies to cover something I couldn't name. And then, I heard it. A voice. Soft. Right behind me. "Don't let them take me." My chair spun so fast it nearly toppled. The room was empty. Just shadows stretching across stainless steel. But the words still hung in the air, clinging to my skin like frost. I wanted to run. God help me. I wanted to run and never come back. But I didn't. I sat there frozen, waiting for something else to happen. For the lights to flicker. For a body to rise. For the whispers to turn into screams. But nothing did. When I finally staggered out to the parking lot, the night air felt alive, like it was breathing with me. I couldn't tell Alvarez. What would I say? That the dead were speaking now? That the same plea I'd read in their notes was echoing in my ears? He'd read me off as burned out, unstable. Maybe he'd be right, but I knew this much. I wasn't imagining it. Because when I got home, bone-tired and shaking, there was a note slipped under my apartment door, scrawled in jagged letters. "Don't let them take you." I stared at the note. For so long my eyes blurred. My apartment door was still locked from the inside. No windows were open. No one should have been able to get in. And yet there it was. Jagged letters. Familiar words. "Don't let them take you." I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards, Every whisper of wind against the glass made me jolt awake. I kept the note on my nightstand, glancing at it every few minutes, trying to convince myself it was a prank. Maybe Alvarez, maybe one of the techs. But how would they even know where I lived? And why? By morning, the edges of my sanity felt shredded. I splashed cold water on my face, stared into the mirror, and barely recognized the man staring back. Pale skin, red eyes, jaw tight with dread. I told myself I was still in control, that I had a job to do. But the morgue didn't feel like a workplace anymore. It felt like a trap. When I arrived, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead like they were mocking me. My shoes echoed on the tiles, each step hollow. And when I passed the cold storage drawers, I felt a weight pressing down on my chest, as though the bodies inside weren't resting, but listening. The fourth body came in that afternoon. This time it was different. Not a professional, not someone alone. A teenager, 17, found dead in his own bed. Parents swore he'd been perfectly healthy, laughing at dinner the night before. In his right hand was a notebook, and on the first page, scrawled in panicked letters, "Don't let them take me." I remember the parents waiting outside. The mother's hand shook so badly she spilled her coffee, staining her blouse. The father kept pacing, muttering under his breath, refusing to sit. When Alvarez spoke to them, his voice was soft but clipped. He wasn't just investigating anymore. He was scared too. The boy's body was lean, athletic, unmarked. No signs of struggle. No signs of overdose. Nothing. But when I cut him open, the same microscopic hemorrhages were there. Same stressed heart tissue. Same story. A body burned out by fear itself. And that's when it hit me. They weren't dying of what was being done to them. They were dying from what they were fighting off. Something was trying to take them, and their bodies couldn't withstand the struggle. I didn't write that in the report, of course. What was I supposed to say? Cause of death, terror. But I knew. In my bones, I knew. That night, I went home and locked every door, every window. I shoved a chair under the handle, sat on the couch with a knife clutched in my hand, like it would make a difference. The note still lay on the table, taunting me. Don't let them take you. At some point, exhaustion won. I drifted off to sleep, and I dreamed. In the dream, I was in a morgue, but it wasn't empty. The drawers were open, and the bodies weren't lying still. They stood, swaying, skin pale, lips blue. Their eyes were hollow pits, dark and endless. And in unison, they whispered, over and over, voices overlapping like a hive. Don't let them take you. Don't let them take you. Don't let them take you. I woke drenched in sweat, knife slipping from my grasp. The clock read 3:12 a.m. The room was dark, too dark, even though the lamp was still on. For a moment, I thought the shadows were moving. And then I heard it, a scrape, from inside my bedroom closet. My whole body went cold. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. The scrape came again, like wood against wood. Something shifting where nothing should move. I forced myself up, knife trembling in my grip. Step by step, I crossed the room. The closet door loomed, silent, waiting. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. And then 3 knocks. From inside, I stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. The knocks came again, deliberate, measured. And then silence. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of my bed until the sun rose. The knife still clutched in my hand, the closet untouched. When daylight came, I finally worked up the nerve to open it. Nothing. Just shirts, coats, shoes. Ordinary. But on the floor, where no paper had been before, lay another note. The same jagged scrawl. You're next. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't call Alvarez. What could I say? That the dead had followed me home. That something was slipping into my apartment, leaving threats? They'd pull me off the case. They'd say I'd cracked under pressure. But it wasn't pressure. It was real. Over the next few days, I stopped keeping track of time. My apartment became a bunker. Curtains drawn, lights on, sleep avoided. And yet, the notes kept coming. Slipped under the door. Left on the kitchen counter when I turned my back. Once tucked beneath my pillow. Always the same message, written in that jagged, desperate hand. Don't let them take you. I started to wonder if they weren't warnings. Maybe they were instructions. Maybe whoever had left them, Daniel, Thomas, the woman, the boy, had been fighting, resisting, and this was their last attempt to pass the knowledge on. But resist what? That question gnawed at me until I couldn't take it anymore. I returned to the morgue, long after hours, the building empty except for the hum of refrigeration. I pulled the case files, photos, notes, every scrap of information. I laid them across the autopsy table, studying the faces of the dead, and that's when I noticed something. The eyes. In every photo, their eyes seemed wrong. Not just lifeless, not just glazed, but stretched wide, as though they had seen something unspeakable in their final moment. A reflection of terror so pure it had carved itself into their features. And in one of the photos, Daniel Mercer's, there was something else. In the corner of his left eye, a shadow, not a trick of the light, not dust on a lens, a shape, long, thin, like fingers, reaching. I slammed the files shut and staggered back. My chest heaved, my throat tightened, because for the first time I understood. Whatever had taken them was watching me too. I left the morgue that night with my stomach in knots and my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key into my car. The city outside looked the same. Traffic lights blinking, people walking dogs, laughter spilling from bars, but it all felt wrong. Like the world had split into two layers, one visible, one lurking just beneath. And I had crossed into the wrong one. When I finally made it home, I locked every door and window again, like it would matter. I sat in the dark with a glass of whiskey, staring at the stack of files I'd carried with me. Daniel Mercer, Thomas Hill, Margaret Crane, the boy, different lives, same fate, and now me. I don't know how long I sat there before I noticed it. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that hums in your ears. And then I realized something that made my blood run cold. The refrigerator had stopped. The low, constant buzz that filled my kitchen was gone. Dead silence. I stood up slowly, every muscle tense, every nerve screaming. And then, from down the hallway, I heard it. A voice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. Just a whisper. My name. Drawn out. Stretched thin, like it was being pulled through water. Michael. My knees almost buckled. I gripped the edge of the table to keep myself upright. I forced myself toward the hallway, heart pounding like a drum in my throat. My bedroom door was ajar, though I knew I'd closed it. The shadows inside shifted, darker than they should have been. And then the closet door creaked. I froze. That same closet, the one that had knocked back at me days earlier. Slowly, agonizingly, it opened. At first, I thought it was empty. Just a black mouth yawning wide. But then movement. A figure, thin and impossibly tall, began to uncoil itself from the darkness. Its limbs bent wrong, stretching farther than bones should allow. And its face, if you can call it a face, was a blur, like smoke caught in a draft, features never staying in one place long enough to make sense. My knife was still on the nightstand. I lunged for it, snatching it up, though deep down I knew it was useless. My hand shook as I raised it. The thing tilted its head, like it was amused. And then, in that same watery voice, it whispered, "Don't let me take you." For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because that's when I understood the notes, the warnings, the desperate scribbles. They hadn't been written to me. They had been written by them, by Daniel, by Thomas, by Margaret, by the boy. Each one of them had seen this thing before the end. Each one had fought to resist. And in their last moments, they had left me a message, as though they knew I'd be next in line. My hand tightened on the knife, but my arm felt like lead. The air grew heavy, pressing down on me, thick and suffocating. My chest burned, my vision blurred, and then I felt it. Fingers, long, cold, unseen, wrapping around my skull, pressing into my thoughts, pulling. I screamed, fought with everything I had. My body convulsed, muscles seizing. I slashed wildly with the knife, hitting nothing. My mind filled with static, memories flashing like a film reel on fire. My childhood, my mother's face, my first day in the morgue, and then blackness. When I opened my eyes, I was on the floor. Dawn light was creeping through the blinds. The apartment was still, quiet, ordinary. The closet was closed, and in my hand, crumpled tight, was another note. The same jagged scrawl, but this time, it was in my handwriting. Don't let them take you. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember anything after the blackness, but my hand ached. The pen was still on the floor beside me, ink smeared on my fingers. I should have walked away, quit my job, burned the files. But you can't just walk away from something like this. You can't unknow it, and more than that, you can't stop it. Because I realized then, the thing hadn't killed me. Not yet. It had marked me. That was months ago. Since then, I've gone through the motions of my work, signed reports, shook hands, pretended I was still the man I used to be. But I know better. Every time I walk into that morgue, I feel it, watching me, waiting. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I hear it whisper again, my name. Sometimes, I even see the others. Daniel, Thomas, the boy, faces flashing in mirrors, reflections in windows, always gone when I blink, as if they're stuck somewhere in between, not alive, not dead, trapped in the same grip that's closing around me. I don't know how much longer I can fight it. I don't know if writing this will help, or if it'll just make me sound insane. But maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why I'm telling you now, because I think this is how it spreads. Through stories, through confessions. Each of us passes the warning down, hoping someone, somewhere, will find a way to stop it. But the truth, I don't think it can be stopped. So if you're listening to this, if you followed me all the way here, don't make the same mistake I did. Don't linger in the silence. Don't listen for the whispers. Don't look too closely at the shadows. And above all, don't let them take you.